I think George R. R. Martin is wrong about the Hugo Awards. I'll explain why in this video. The first book of George R. R. Martin I read was Tough Voyaging, which was published in 1986. I probably read it in 86, maybe 87. It's a wonderful book. It's great. I highly recommend it. The next book of his that I read was Night Flyers, which was, shall we say, dubious. I didn't think it was a very good book. It was okay. It was interesting. It got made into a film, which was interesting, and I know George R. R. Martin was somewhat involved with that. Then most people don't even recognize that he was involved with Beauty and the Beast. And that's really not my type of stuff. I know that he was heavily involved in Beauty and the Beast, and that's where he got a lot of notice from Hollywood, and he got a lot of feedback from that, and that's why I think he has been so successful with the Game of Thrones on HBO. I started reading the first Game of Thrones, which is the first book in the series, when it came out in paperback. And then all the rest of the series I bought in hardback as soon as they were available and reading them. But George R. R. Martin recently made a statement. He thought that what's happening with the Hugo Awards is terrible, and it's going to destroy the Hugo Awards. This is where I disagree with him. I mean, I've seen it, and he basically... George R. R. Martin basically said, oh, I don't see people treating other authors the way it's been described, the way they've been treating some of the conservative writers. And I saw how science fiction treated Jerry Pournelle. I went to a lot of conventions, and Jerry Pournelle, who's still alive, who's out there, very conservative, libertarian. Some argue that he actually created what today we see the grid, where you have left and right, and then you have social and social topic versus economic topic, and the concept of libertarians versus what would normally call conservatives. That's what Jerry Pournelle pushed that, and he made a lot of emphasis in some of the world cons. And seeing how he was talked about, how he was treated at world cons that he was at, you have to understand that a lot of people despise the conservative bent that he has, the libertarian bent. They didn't like him, that he was shunned, that there were jokes told about him in other panels, that he was treated horribly. So I'm not surprised that some of the authors on the Sad Puppy slate feel that way, because I saw it happen to one of their peers, Jerry Pournelle. He was nominated, I think, 7 times for Hugos, never won. He wrote a bunch of wonderful books, and he wrote a bunch of books with Larry Niven, and none of those won as soon as he was with Larry Niven. Some of the stuff that Larry Niven won some, but he was there. But I think George R. R. Martin is wrong, because he says that, oh, they're ruining the Hugo Awards. I don't think they're ruining the Hugo Awards. Things swing back and forth in politics. They go back and forth. And what happens is that we're seeing some people there. The most interesting fact that came out, that I was doing a little bit of research for this today, was the number of people who have attending membership in the Worldcon this year. Let's see if I can find it. I think there were like 1,400 voting memberships purchased just recently, which is amazing, which is going to make it's going to give a lot more money to the convention committee for running the convention, which is going to make it better, because it's a nonprofit convention. They're going to make it better. It's it's just another thing. It's just another thing that's happening. Getting more new blood into the Worldcon is a good thing, because Worldcons have been getting smaller and smaller all these years. They're a very elite club of literature. And I remember that was it. It's Comic Con is much larger. You've got Dragon Con is much larger. You've got all these other conventions which are huge. And the World Science Fiction Convention has been getting smaller. And it's because its focus is on literature. It's not on movies. There are no Hugos for the movies. There are no Hugos for presentations. You know, that graphic novels aren't really even nominated for the Hugos. That it's actually the written word. And that's what the convention is. And I remember hearing discussions about that where people were upset that the conventions were getting smaller. And they have been getting smaller because a lot of people... But then you have the hardcore fans who are going, yeah, we don't want people who are just into movies, who are just into comic books. We want people who read. And that's what the World Con is about. That's people who read. It's a very literary group. You find people who've actually read the books. I mean, you know, that's sort of the running joke at World Con is, yes, I actually read the stuff, as opposed to the people who just wait for the movies to come out. Now, George R.R. Martin, I'm irritated at him, and I've been irritated at him for many years, simply because he hasn't produced the books in a timely manner. And for those of you who are wondering, he's the season 6 of, no, is it season 6? I get the seasons mixed up with the one on television. I obviously watch Game of Thrones, the show, but the books are different and they're better. And that's saying a lot, because George R.R. Martin is the only author I know who successfully worked with Hollywood, and he did that with Beauty and the Beast. And now and then when he did it with Game of Thrones, because when I was waiting for Dance with Dragons to come out, and waiting, and I was very irate. Why is he taking so long to get this book that I'm avidly waiting for? And then I find out he signed with HBO, and he's just been taking a lot longer to get The Winds of Winter, which is the next book in the series, out. And they're worried, a lot of people are worried that the television series will actually be out before the book is out. And that sounds like that's probably what's going to happen. So, but I get upset with George R.R. Martin because he's written some other stuff and he hasn't been writing the book. I wish he would do what they did, or I wish that people would do with him what they did with Donald Knuth. For those of you in programming, you know that Donald Knuth, when he got his PhD, he sent off a letter to Addison Wesley with a proposal for a book called The Art of Computer Science. And he was going to have 7 chapters. And then he submitted the draft of the first chapter. And the draft was 1,200 pages long. I think those are numbers off the top of my head. That's why they suddenly realized, yes, this is not going to be a single book. This is going to be a series of books. And he's been writing them ever since. And along the way, he created a whole nother, he radically changed the way mathematics was typeset. And because when he started getting into mathematical formula and trying to typeset it. But Donald Knuth was a professor. They relieved him of all teaching responsibilities so he could just write. And that's what we have, Donald Knuth doesn't respond to email. He doesn't have an email address. He has people who pick up things from him and pick up things that are addressed to him, and then they filter it, and then it actually... only if it meets certain criteria does it actually get to him. And I'm sort of proud. I actually have an email that came back from him. He told somebody else to say this because I thought I found a bug in a program of his called Tech, which is really hard to find bugs in that program if you know anything about it. And I'm really proud. I actually found one. I didn't find a bug, but I found, shall we say, something that is definitely not intuitively obvious. But Knuth no longer, he doesn't get distracted by teaching, email, things like that. All he does is work on his books now, because people are worried that he won't finish them before he dies. Because what is it? It's volume 4. He determined that volume 4 is actually going to be 3 separate volumes because the number of pages is so large. It's massive. They said he's the most referenced author for papers on computer science. And he's a treasure. And the University of California relieved him of all teaching duties and just said, write, because we want you to finish this. And I would like to see something happen with George R.R. Martin. He does a blog. I wish he would quit. And I'm not saying that I don't like what he writes. I think he would just better focus on writing. And that he would focus on it and finish the story. And I heard he got upset when somebody said they were worried about that. But the time between his novels keeps stretching out. And that's the only thing that makes me angry at him. I mean, his politics is not my politics. I don't care. He can do things. It's there. I want to see how he handles in the TV series some of the stuff that he wrote in the books in there. For example, Catelyn Stark is dead, but there's a scene in one of the books with her after that. And I'll leave that without giving any. It's in. I can't remember exactly which one of the books, but it's a teaser about her after she's dead. Just because it's this is fantasy. Just because they're dead doesn't mean they aren't a continuing character in the series. So what happens is that how are they going to do that in the television shows? Because there's been some foreboding, some setup, but I'm not even sure they're going to bring her back in that. But those are the things that I'm looking forward in the next set of books, because the books are a bit different than the movie or the show. And what happens? But I think George R.R. Martin has said that the Yugos are destroyed, and I disagree. I mean, I've seen politics and I've seen the way things are going with that, and I think it's just upsetting to him that some people won, because he said there was the example when L. Ron Hubbard, when one of his books was actually got put on the slate by a group of Scientologists. And they all voted for it. He mentions that in his blog about that happening, and he thought that was okay. But he thought what the Sad Puppies was doing is wrong. And I'm going, I guess they're wrong because they were successful where L. Ron Hubbard's group was not. So it's okay to do it as long as you don't succeed. That's sort of hypocritical to me. So that's why I think that it's there. But I think the Yugos will keep going on. I'm fascinated by what's going to happen, see what's going on. The fact that there have been a lot more supporting memberships for Worldcon is a great thing. I say good thumbs up for that, because that gets more people, more money in the convention, more people interested in reading. Hopefully people will read the stories. I can encourage that more. I really encourage all you parents, read to your children. That's the greatest benefit you can do. I know my mother read to me, and it's a factor. People, if you read to your children, they will read to their children, and it becomes a habit. You read for enjoyment, and what happens is that reading is an important part. Reading for pleasure, because I was amazed when I had somebody work for me. And I mentioned to him, what do you read for pleasure? And he goes, I don't read for pleasure. And I go, that's like, you don't read for pleasure? I'm going, that's the thing. So that's why I enjoy literature. I enjoy reading. And I encourage, the thing that got me encouraged is we get the politics of this has got people interested in an obscure little convention. Let's be honest, Worldcon is not a big, widely known. The Hugo Awards don't get the press that other awards do. but they do get some press. But what happens is that it's interesting, and it's like everything will, you know, there've been bigger scandals. Like I'm just reading the one about the scandal last year about Marion Zimmer Bradley's daughter accusing her of abuse. And anybody know about that? That was an interesting scandal. And so you have all kinds of scandals that have happened, and the Yugos will survive and continue on. But there's a whole host of things to read, and that's what I encourage you. Get the list of the Yugo nominees. Read them. And if you're interested, buy a supporting membership and vote for them. But it's not going to, just me encouraging people to do that is not going to destroy the Yugos. I think that actually I'm very encouraged to hear that there are more people voting this year. If you like my video, press the thumbs up button. I'd appreciate that. Or if this interests you, you can always subscribe to my channel. There's a button right above. I look forward to hearing some comments. Tell me what you think about this, and I'll try and reply, and we can see if I'll do some more of these. Thank you.